Griffin Spalding County Board of Education work session 5/17/22 at 4 o'clock. If you would please place all electronic communication devices on silent or vibrate. And I'm going to have Mr. Doss do our prayer, and I will lead the Pledge of Allegiance. Thank you, Mr. Doss.
Absolutely. Let's stand. Father, Lord, we just thank you for this beautiful afternoon. We thank you that school is winding down for students and teachers, and maybe a brief reprieve for some central office staff. Lord, we pray, Father, Lord, for your wisdom and direction in all that we do, these presentations that are being presented to us, this budget, Lord, that we are working to be able to pass, that you will give us the wisdom and knowledge we need to do the best for Griffin Spalding County School System. I thank you for that, and I pray this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Our Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right, board members, we need to adopt the agenda.
Second.
All right. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right. 3-0, thank you. Next is the consent agenda.
Madam Chair, I make a motion that we accept the consent agenda as presented.
All right, motion to accept.
I will second the review it. One more time.
Thank you. All right, we have a second. All in favor, please raise your hand. All right, 3-0, thank you. Next is our presentations and discussions. Up first will be the April financial report. Mr. Jones. Mr. Jones has a guest.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good evening, board members. I do have a special guest with me this evening, Miss Jada Taylor from Griffin High School. I'm not going to steal her thunder. I'm going to let her tell you a little bit about why she's up here, and then we're going to kind of do a dual presentation to you, okay?
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members, and Superintendent Simmons. My name is Jada Taylor, and I worked as a finance intern with the Work-Based Learning Program. In the Work-Based Learning Program, I got to learn some of the ends of finance. I attend Griffin High School and will be graduating this year with the class of 2022. I plan to attend Kennesaw State University and major in education following graduation from high school.
Wonderful. And coming back to Griffin Spalding to teach.
Yes.
Okay, Jada's going to give you a rundown of some financial nuggets, and then we'll come back up for a little more stuff.
General Fund. General Fund revenues and expenditures are tracking along the budget relatively well compared to the previous year. Revenues are 85.36% through April 2022 as compared to 83.81% through April 2021. The revenue percentages have stabilized as we have collected the majority of property taxes in the first 2 months of the calendar year. With the maintaining of a strong fund balance, expenses will be able to be paid in a routine manner with no need to borrow monies. Expenditures are 69.62% of the budget, which is a slight decrease from the prior year, through 10 months of the fiscal year. Most functional categories are performing under budget. As of the date of this report, legal expenses are recapped for the following. Expenses incurred in April, $4,047.50. Special revenue funds. We continue to process our drawdowns of funds from the various grants and will continue to retrieve funds for CARES 2 and 3. This has and will enhance our cash flow heading into the future time frame. The approvals of grants, budgets continue to happen, and therefore cash receipts have been increasing and will continue until those are done. With annual budgets being approved locally for all of our grants, GSCS is following applicable procedures. Capital Projects Fund. Renovation work continued on several projects. The most significant expenditures for the month include 46X for bus purchases, 43X for Taylor Street projects, 38X for Spalding High, and 22X for technology. East Block's collections for the retail month of March 2022 were $1,171,488.93. Nutrition Fund. The Nutrition Fund began the year in July with major planning and minimal expenditures compared to the normal operating mode throughout the school year. Students returned in early August, and food usage and other expenses have increased. Through the month of April, net revenues are $1,417,931.59. The Nutrition Department will be observing the seamless summer option waiver this school year, so operations should see an increase in participation from students.
First of all, that was excellent.
Absolutely, great job.
And now we're going to kind of finish up with a little bit of what you're used to. I'm going to let her start.
Balance sheet for the month of April.
Okay, I'll direct you back to the screen on our 6-page presentation now. She's going to announce each sheet. So this is our balance sheet. You'll see our yellow items. General fund balance is right at $40 million through April. That'll be coming down with our summer salary accruals, so don't get too excited about the amount of money that will begin to decrease. Also, Nutrition Fund, he has another half month or so of feeding children, so that will decrease as well as he goes into summer feeding.
General Fund Operating Statement.
So our next item here is page 2, and that's our how we functioned in the month of April for the general fund. You can see revenues outpaced expenses by approximately $1.4 million.
Special Revenues Operating Statement.
So page 3 will be all of our grants, and you can see how we're reporting those from left to right with original budgets, with our drawdowns up at the top, and then our expenses in the bottom yellow.
Nutrition Operating Statement.
So Mr. Wheeler's fund was $6.6 million in revenues through the month of April with expenses of $4.7 million. He's operating in the current year balance fund to the good of $1.4 million.
Investment Register.
So board members, this is the fiduciary funds that we keep up with. I'll point you to $28 million is what we've got with the investment pool at the state. The highest balance of that is our East Block 6 current balance, which is the item right above the yellow at $13.2 million.
SPLOS Receipts.
So our last sheet is the item that Jada talked about a while ago, 1.171 for the retail month of March. We've got 3 months left in this operating year, so for 21 collection months, we're already at $22 million in receipts. So are there any questions? Jada's mother is also here. Will you stand up right quick? I think you're one of ours, aren't you? So anyway, I'm really proud of her. I want to say this. I told her to say it, but she didn't. When we have work-based learning interns, they're not just paper shredders. This young lady has been on the computer, reconciling benefit, doing all kind of stuff to try to teach her a little bit about going forward. Is that true?
Yes, that's true.
All right, so if you don't have any questions, that's all we have.
Thank you, Jada, and thank you, Ms. Taylor, for being here. Number one, Kennesaw State's a great school, so you're going to a great school, and congratulations, and we will see you next week. That's awesome.
Madam Chair, if I may, I want to hear more from Jada about your experience.
Okay, I was able to reconcile, which is like putting together Excel sheets, and I was also able to enter direct deposits, and I was also able to enter in deduction amounts in this software program called Macaleer. I was able to do a lot with the finance intern program, and there was a lot that really went into it that I had no idea before entering.
Awesome.
I'm sure if Mr. Holmes was here, he would ask if he got 2 direct deposits, so I'm going to ask on his behalf.
Thank you so much.
That's great.
Thank you.
What a great young lady. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I? I would like to thank not only Mr. Jones, but the entire finance, HR, maintenance, all of the staff who support and host our work-based learning students. You've heard me say that in our school system, our students will read, write, speak, and solve. That was a manifestation of the work that we are doing, the work that we'll continue to do. But more importantly, that's a beacon relative to this community and where it's headed. So kudos to you, Jada. Kudos to Kennesaw State, and kudos to your family. Job well done.
Thank you, Mr. Jones. All right. Next, we have Ms. Austin with the federal grants budget update. Hey, Ms. Austin.
Hello, Madam Chair. How are you?
Nice to see you.
Thank you. So good evening to yourself, esteemed board members, and our own superintendent of schools, Dr. Simmons. I come before you very briefly.
If you'll do us a favor and speak into the microphone.
Let's go this way. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Just play like you're on American Idol or something.
Yes, ma'am. Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Again, good evening. This evening, I come to before you to provide information regarding our federal funds. Of course, Griffin Spalding County School District is a recipient of numerous federal funding streams here, and so all of our federal grant budgets must be legally adopted by the Griffin Spalding County School System Board of Education after Godot approves our final submitted budget applications. The following budgets have been submitted to Godot and approved by the program managers at our State Department. Our superintendent is presenting the following budgets for your review. And in your informational packet and on the screen, you will see a list of all of our federal funds thus far this year. Additionally, our federal fiscal year runs from July of one year to the following September of the next. They're 15-month grants instead of our usual 12-month grants that we're used to. We get an additional 3 months with federal program grants. So our budgets and amendments will be recommended for approval in June, all of them for the entire year thus far, okay? So after that approval, those budgets will be adopted and will be requested to be adopted by our BOE coming from our superintendent.
Ms. Austin, I just have one question. I've
Yes,
mentioned this through the years.
Yes, ma'am.
How helpful it might be for the city, county, and school system to have a grant writer. Are you a grant writer? Because I know that's a special skill. I learned that when I was still in education myself.
I do some grant writing, yes, ma'am.
Do you feel like that it would benefit us to employ perhaps a part-time grant writer?
I'll be honest with you, Madam Chair. I think that we have, from my seat, maybe we're already managing somewhere between 15 and 20 grants just under my house, and I know my teammates have many others that they're managing as well. I think we're working towards being able to really take advantage of those additional grant opportunities that are available through Godot, and even the TNL team has some grant writers on the team that write for grants for teaching and learning. I think that the opportunity is something to explore, because I really do see us being able to take advantage of even more grants that'll be available to us in addition to what we already receive.
Okay. I hope in the future, if you feel like that would be of benefit to us,
Yes, ma'am.
obviously, and our students, I hope that you will request that, because I know there's a lot of money out there,
Yes, ma'am.
and I know that writing a grant is a particular skill set. But I just want to be sure we continue to get our piece of the pie, so to speak.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. Appreciate it. Thank you, ma'am.
Are there any questions for me?
Any questions, board members?
Nope.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next, we have Dr. Greer with the Orton Gillingham update. Hey, Dr. Greer.
Good evening. How are you?
Doing great. How are
Good.
you?
Doing very well, thank you. Madam Chair, board members, and Superintendent Simmons, today I would like to provide you with an update on our Orton Gillingham implementation for K-2. Of course, we have our non-negotiables, which are to be professional, be accountable, and communicate effectively. Our focus areas, including literacy, enrollment, attendance, discipline, and solving. For today, we will focus on literacy. And we have our roadmap to success, which establishes our instructional vision for students' success. As it relates to Orton Gillingham, please note that it is an approach to teaching, not a program. It is a systematic and structured literacy approach to teaching phonics. We use specific techniques, including tracing letters while saying the sound, swapping syllables, coding vowels, charting, tracking while reading, highlighting spelling patterns, and additional techniques. Overall, the approach embeds reading, writing, and spelling instruction, which are critical to phonics. We have had the opportunity over the course of this school year to assess our students, and we have seen some increased improvement from the OG sector, if you will. OG assessments typically assess phonological and phonemic awareness, accuracy and fluency of letter naming, letter formation, alphabet knowledge, phonics, oral and silent reading skills, spelling, and writing. The goal for the program is for 80% of our students in K2 to meet 80% proficiency. While teachers traditionally administer the formative assessments, we do have 3 benchmarks throughout the school year, administered at the beginning of the year, in the middle of the year, and at the end of the year. Based on the middle of the year assessment, which was given in December before the students went home for the holiday break, 61% of our students were at that 80% proficiency mark. 58% of our students in first grade were at the 80% proficiency mark, and 45% of our second grade students were at the 80% proficiency mark. Now, if you take a look at the data, you do see that our second grade students were lagging just a little bit behind the others. So we did implement some very specific support structures to ensure that we can increase our students' achievement. One, we tiered our students based on their mastery and tiered the professional learning for teachers as well. We focused in on our second grade teachers, and in doing so, created professional learning communities for our second grade teachers. During these professional learning communities, teachers had an opportunity to continue to hone in on their practice as well as master concepts that they would teach to the students. We also implemented district-wide second grade PLCs for our classroom teachers, and through these PLCs, we were able to provide more support to our teachers around those complex concepts. District leaders as well as school leaders worked together to provide coaching and feedback to drive changes with the OG implementation. As a result of that tiered support for our OG program, specifically for second grade, we have noticed, just based on classroom assessments, that we've seen an increase of 45% of our students scoring at the 80th percentile it's grown from 45% to 66%. That was in March. Right now, we are preparing our students to take end-of-year assessments in OG. So as of this Friday, we will be able to see even more growth from our students. We are confident that we can get to that 80%. We are confident. As it relates to OG professional learning, 100% of our K2 general ed teachers have been trained in OG. A few months ago, I did come to you discussing the Readiness and Literacy Grant, and we will use those grant funds to train additional teachers over the summer. We have 2 cohorts, specifically in July and August. The first cohort is being funded by the grant, and we will train up to 50 teachers, specifically those EIP teachers, which are our intervention teachers, our ESOL teachers, and also our special education teachers. The second cohort, which will take place just a week later, will be for our new K2 teachers to the district. And any teachers that are newly hired after that second cohort goes through will be trained later in August. This concludes my presentation for the Orton Gillingham update. Are there any questions?
That was a nice jump from 45 to 66, so that's I'll be eager to see what the final at the end of the week. That'd be
It's
great.
looking good. We have some preliminary numbers. Data looks good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Dr. Greer.
Thank you.
Any questions, board members? Thank you so much.
Thank
Great.
you.
All right, Mr. Doss, agenda protocols.
Yeah, the purpose of this discussion is just to make sure that we as a board are on the same page as the agenda goes, and then making sure that we're giving our superintendent that direction on what we're looking for. I know that Dr. Simmons, then Mr. Simmons, came on board and hit the ground running, had a lot of things that he was juggling and trying to make happen. But I am looking to make sure that we have kind of a set protocol as to when we see things, how that happens, when we're voting on things. I know that there are certain times when something needs to be pressed forward and done that. I don't think anyone on the board is opposed to at times being able to see something in executive session or see something at a presentation at a meeting, and if it needs to happen, calling a meeting 3 or 4 days later to be able to vote on that to press it through. So I want to compliment you and thank you for what we have already established. And right now, I think kind of the general protocol is that we receive kind of an agenda on a Thursday before a Tuesday meeting. It's then going to be put out then on Friday. Within that, I think it's important that we have openness to our community to be able to see what that agenda is. And so if we're publishing that on Friday for a Tuesday meeting, I think that is great. Another thing that is important to me, and we had lots of discussion about this prior to Dr. Simmons coming on the board, was when I first came on as a board member, names for positions that were a football coach, names for positions that were principals, names for, that they're not more important positions, but they may be more prominent in the community as far as a community scene. Some of those names were not put on the agenda, and it was just announced at the meeting. I think it needs to be on the agenda so that as we're moving forward, the entire community is open to being able to see that. I realize that puts more pressure on you, Dr. Simmons, to have all of that legwork done ahead of time. But I don't know, I just wanted to open it up for some discussion and make sure all the other board members were feeling some of that same way, or you may have some differences of opinion.
So, for the sake of discussion, I do want to say that as a board member, I feel that we have gotten information in enough time. I feel that as long as packets are being delivered Thursday, no later than Thursday, and information is put out into public on a Friday, we do understand that sometimes over the weekend something may change, and that same courtesy is still due to the public to update the agenda to make sure that information is there, whether if it's through an asterisk, which I'm sure it's already done. So I think at this point, the way that the schedule that we have, the protocols that we have established, I think they are being followed. And so, just in support of, to ensure that the general public has enough time to review information so that they can reach out to us and hear their feedback and concerns is a great point. And if we have an update, or is there some way, well, maybe is there a link that we could put in the communicator that has the agenda attached to it? Because I know you advertise that the meeting is happening, but can you add the agenda link in the communicator to the graphic? Just so it.
You're talking about when it goes out on Monday, if there has been a change?
Yeah, just to expand our reach to the people that may be able to view and see it. If it, not getting notifications from Assembly being online, but at least it's also in the communicator. That is the only thing that I probably would add to the process, just to ensure that it's able to extend our reach to more people who view the communicator on a weekly basis.
And so, and I'm fine with that, and I think that's a great idea. For instance, if Dr. Simmons had been in a series of interviews today and had made a decision on someone that he wanted to hire, I think it's okay for him to have that discussion for us in executive session today, but there may be times when he doesn't want to wait until the following 2 weeks to the next meeting. Is everybody okay with, at that time, him being able to ask, can we schedule this, have a called meeting 3 days from now, or whatever the case may be?
Well, not to say I'm against it. I just think it should be on a case-by-case basis, looking at the position that may be on the agenda. So I would we could take it on a case-by-case basis. I don't want to say, well, this is the way that we're going to do it, because it may not always pan out like that. But if
Yeah,
we do
if it can wait 2 weeks, I definitely would like for it to wait the 2 weeks.
Yeah, so if we could, I mean, if they're on a case-by-case basis, if information that Dr. Simmons needs to get to the board, that in the appropriate time, so whether it's executive session or if he's reaching out to us individually to discuss, I think those ways are fine. But I do not want to say that, well, it needs to be done like this each and every time.
Oh, I agree.
Based upon, the positions that may be up for the board to vote on. So
I think we're on the same page. I'm not wanting to have a bunch of called meetings.
Right, but this time of year, I think that's to be expected somewhat. But I agree with Mr. Brown. I think on a case-by-case basis, and what the superintendent desires is, sometimes that's really important. I'm surprised we haven't had a called meeting this season, because we usually do have 2 or 3. So, what?
He said you just jinxed it.
Any other discussion? Questions? Sure. Absolutely.
point of
So,
order.
I want to make sure that I'm clear with what I'm hearing. One, it is the board's desire to list personnel actions or recommendations on the agenda. I will ask the board to be mindful. The assumption is when I place someone's name on the agenda, I'm either having to say to them, this is really for show, it may not happen, but we have to be mindful about where they currently reside in terms of their work location. And some employers aren't interested in their folk leaving, particularly if they're not leaving. You didn't say this, but what I heard is there is the potential that I can place it on the agenda so that the community is aware. What's the likelihood of a decision changing at that point, which negatively impacts the person whose name was placed on the agenda? You understand what I'm trying to ask?
I do.
I'd like to hear your thoughts, just so that I'm clear that we are moving in the same direction.
My thoughts are, when we are in executive session and you present who you would like, you should have a consensus at that point of where everybody's at. You may have somebody that says, I need to think on that a little bit more, or whatever the case may be. But before it is actually put on the agenda, unless we find out they're an axe murderer or something else, between, then I would think that you would know that it's going to be a go.
Understood.
Thoughts?
I'm fine.
I'm good with that too. I just know for me, instead of having them all lumped in together, I always felt that if it was a central office person, a principal, that those items should be pulled from the consent agenda and then placed, and we vote on it individually, or if you want to group them all together once we hear the recommendation and for discussion, then we can do that. So only if those members are central office staff and administrators such as principals and directors, not assistant principals, not teachers, or anything like that, then yes. In the event of that, then no. I think the way that if we're having this discussion, but at the end of the day, I want to put it back to the superintendent to provide that guidance in how we're going to do it since we're working together as a governance team.
I would agree with that. I don't want to put anyone at risk on the other end before they ever get here. I just have to trust your judgment with regard to that, with regard to your statement, and I do.
Madam Chairman, if I could just a second.
Sure.
When I started to say something, I noticed there wasn't a microphone in front of me. Maybe I was supposed to have taken the hint. I don't know. I gave all the board members a packet of information that it says Hallman Law Office PC. About 3 years ago, this issue came up at the statewide meeting of the school board attorneys. The Attorney General's office had taken a position with Evans County Board of Education that they had to provide more specific information on the agenda that went out before the meeting that's required under the Open Meetings Act, specifically with regard to personnel decisions. And after their board attorney discussed that, I asked him to send me all the correspondence that had gone back and forth. And I'm giving it to y'all, just kind of let you see where the issue stands and what the Attorney General's office, which is the state agency in charge of enforcing the Open Meetings Act, how they feel about it. I have always taken the position since I've been board chair that the Open Meetings Act requires publication of an agenda, letting the public know what issues are going to be discussed or action taken upon them in the board meeting. And further, that because of the way employment decisions are made in public education, if the superintendent is making a recommendation for hiring Joe Jones as assistant principal at Cowan Road Middle, that simply putting Cowan Road Middle School assistant principal on the agenda is not enough, because the board's not deliberating upon whether or not there's going to be an assistant principal at Cowan Road. What you're deliberating on is whether or not Joe Jones will be appointed as the assistant principal at Cowan Road. Now, having said that, there is very much a disagreement around the state among the school systems as to the way they do that. The issue came up when Dr. Jones was superintendent. The issue came up again when Mr. Smith was superintendent. When Jim was here, I called around the board attorneys around and said, how do y'all do this? And there was no consensus whatsoever. We were being more strict as following what I think the Open Meetings Act requires than other folks around us. And then that's what made the Evans County case interesting to me when it came up 3 years ago, because the Attorney General's office was taking the same position that I've always taken. Now, having said that, I may have just done what my wife says I'm bad about doing. I told you how to make a watch rather than telling you what time it is. But I want the board to keep in mind that we do have a legal obligation under the Open Meetings Act to disclose to the public all the issues that you're going to take up within a reasonable amount of time prior to the board meeting. Now, that may not require actually putting Joe Jones's name by the assistant principal's position. There is not an appellate case that says that. Just know that there is an assistant attorney general, and I guess she's still in office, that takes that position.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Shepherd. I have always appreciated, since I've been on the school board, your willingness to keep us in line, and I have, not that we've, I think maybe 1 or 2 times.
And out of jail.
But I just really appreciate that, because I'm a firm believer of that, and the law is the law, and we've got to follow the law. So I appreciate what you do, keeping us in line. Any other comments? Okay, thank you, Mr. Doss. All right, moving on to our action items. We have purchase of flooring, C building renovations. Mr. Akins, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, board members, Dr. Simmons. First, I want to thank you for allowing us to bring this action item to you during the work session today. Administrative Services and Facilities and Construction is seeking approval to purchase flooring for the C building renovation here on campus that will house finance and human resources. We're asking for approval for the purchase of this flooring from Zebulon Floor Covering for $83,162.33, plus a 10% contingency for any final adjustments that may be needed, not to exceed $92,000. We received 5 bids on the flooring, one of which did not include all of the flooring, but Zebulon Flooring came in as the lowest bid there. The funds that we will be using here will come from SPLOST 4. Wanted to quickly, I know we had an update last month on the different SPLOST, just to let you know, SPLOST 4 is one that we are trying to wind down. Now there are only 3 projects left, one being Atkinson Elementary, where we're trying to put a walking track in for the school. That one's there. Follow up on Jackson Road with some of the controls for the lighting, heating, air, that sort of thing, and then the central office campus. So what is remaining at this time is roughly $1.3 million in that for those 3 projects, which the larger of the 3 is this. So at this time, it is recommended that the Griffin Spalding County Board of Education approve the base bid of $83,162.33 submitted by Zebulon Floor Covering and allow a 10% contingency not to exceed $92,000. Any questions?
All right, any questions, board members? All right, do I have a motion?
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion, we have a second. All in favor, please raise your right hand. All right, 4-0, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Akins. And then next action item is the tentative fiscal year 2023 budget approval. Mr. Jones?
Good evening, Madam Chair, board members. A couple of items tonight just want to refer your attention to so I don't get confused on this. We've got a 19-slide presentation I'm going to try to run through with you. We're going to have any question you want answered in that as well. We're going to have an action item to recommend the tentative adoption of the budget. We've also got a summary document that's attached to the agenda that will be placed in the newspaper on Friday if you all adopt this budget. And then we've got our budget book that we had given out last week that I'll be glad to refer to any tabs if you have any questions in that as we go through this. Okay? Okay, so as we start every meeting, a little bit of this I went through in the public hearing. Our goal is to communicate effectively with you, but also the accountableness and the professionalism of what we're talking about, which is spending taxpayer money, both from the state level and the local level. So we'll get into that in just a second. Obviously, our mission through any of our spending is to empower each student to graduate college and career ready. All right, let's see how this works now. Obviously, our roadmap to success, we went over this earlier, either it still rolls back to leadership, teaching, and learning in some of our goal areas, and you can see our blue and green boxes. We'll be talking a lot about high-performing staff in this presentation, along with organizational and operational efficiency. So the presentation I gave you at the last meeting talked about our goal areas that the superintendent has also asked us to align some budget priorities to. And some of these I'll allude to in just a minute with some dollar figures. Support personnel is under several of our goal areas, and a lot of our increased spending in this budget will be about that, taking care of our people. We'll allude to that in just a second. We'll also talk about the need or the want or the request to take us to the next level with an enterprise resource platform, better known as another software system to help our district move into the next century of what we're operating. We've talked a lot about our limitations. COVID has exposed that to us, and we've taken our software system to about as far as we can take it. You know, you've got me coming in behind other people trying to take it to another level, but it's still only so much we can do. Also, I'm going to talk a little bit more. I started this discussion last meeting about a longevity supplement for certified employees that have been employed in our district, maybe at the 21 to 23 max state level salary level. And I've asked Ms. Battle to be kind of on standby if I need some help explaining what we're talking about with that. We're going to talk about our salary study for classified employees. I'll go ahead and tell you, I believe it's tab 6 in the book. There's a thorough analysis by job with a current hourly rate, a proposed hourly rate, a current annual salary, proposed annual salary per position, and some notes out to the right that tells you the impact of that. Again, I cannot take credit for that. Ms. Battle and her staff with our compensation specialist has really done a good job with that. We helped a little bit, but I'm not going to take credit for that. She had a lot to do with that. So there's a $1.2 million, $1.4 million impact with that. We'll talk about that in a second. And then, again, we have a learning management system that you all have actually already approved called Canvas. It's for next year. You've already approved it, but we're listing it for transparency because it's an FY23 expenditure. So I don't know what happened to the format on that, but the yellow on that is the changes from the last meeting that we had. Our spending at that point was in the $99 million range, so it's up to $102 million. Again, we'll go through why that is in just a second. The special revenue fund has went up just a couple of $100,000 at $28.6 million. One of the tabs in the budget books gives you specifics on that. The capital projects fund remained the same at $14 million. And there's a list of projects in one of these slides that talks about what that's for. Nutrition, $7.4 million. That didn't change. Again, Wheeler is under the CEP program for next year. That's going to kind of mirror what we're doing this year, so his receipts will be similar in nature. And then debt service, again, we closed that last year, but we're still reminding you all of that the district doesn't have any in debt that they've encumbered at this point to sell bonds for. I'm not sure what's going on with the PowerPoint. When we sent it, it was in line. So, Lonnie, do you think that's because it wasn't PDF'd? Okay. So there's a PowerPoint version and a PDF version, but we'll go. You get the gist of what we're talking about here. Bottom line number there, 9,124 FTE. We've got to find a way to get that turned around. I'm saying board member, superintendent, me, all staff, community. Somehow we've got to get children engaged to want to be in our schools. $5,000 a child is the impact when we lose a child in the school district. Could be 4,500, could be 5,500. I'm just giving you an average. So if we lose approximately 200 students, then that's going to be on or about $1 million. If that continues in a recurring nature like we talked about in the public hearing, then we're going to be, those decreases multiply over the years. You could be talking about $1 million over multiple years. This slide did not change from the last meeting, but I'll just run through it. The calendar for students, it will remain at 177 days. You all have already approved that in prior meetings earlier in the year. The work calendars for employees remains the same. We will be talking about a step increase, about $800,000. We will be talking about the certified salary increase. Interesting enough, the governor just signed the state budget on Thursday. So you all got your budget books, I believe, Thursday morning. He signed the budget. You know, he has 40 days after the 40-day session to sign the budget. So that was done on Thursday. So most of what you've got says proposed on your salary schedules under that tab. We'll talk about anytime there's a salary increase for certified, the local teaching supplement also increases inherently because it's a percentage of the salary that a teacher's getting from the state. We talked about the salary study, and again, as you see, we're not going to have any increases in health insurance to my knowledge right now, and we'll talk about the longevity supplement in just a second. We did try to more right-size our schools on this first bullet here where we looked at the positions that they were earning through the QBE formula. There was a reduction of positions. We have certain schools asking for some of those back. That's a consideration on one of our sheets we'll look at in a minute, but there was a net decrease of positions to help balance this budget. That's not done to necessarily raise class sizes, but I do acknowledge that we're looking at class sizes, maximums, minimums, whenever we're trying to work with the schools to staff appropriately. Still dealing with a little bit of COVID-19. Our plan, if you all remember, I've told you several times since I've been in the district, we have inherently used our CARES 2 budget to offset expenses in the general fund. Our plan will be to do that one more year of next year, and then those expenses will have to be retrieved back into the general fund. We'll have to bring those back in. So that's important when we're looking at millage rates, we're looking at child counts, anything that's a revenue generator for our district that right now we may be getting a little bit of a pause on because we can defer those expenses. Again, $98.8 million in revenue is what it's looking like with a 102.3 expenditure difference of 3.5. So let me be clear on what we're asking you to approve when we get to that point. We are literally asking you to approve a threshold of up to $3.5 million to operate in to come back for the final budget approval in June. We've got a lot of things in a proposed or consideration nature. And we're presenting this to you tonight as if the items that I put on the supplemental sheets are all paid for out of the general fund. They won't be. Salary increases will be bared by nutrition, by federal programs, by general fund, but what you're seeing is as if it was all out of the general fund because we haven't made those decisions on who's where yet. So that will be what we ask you to do. You do have a healthy fund balance of 26.2, and I continue to think I need to verify that, but that is what the audit report says. So, again, that's why I'm putting this on here. In no other year when I look back did it have the official balance in there, so I put that in there this year. So before I go any further, this is some nuts and bolts items. Is there any question that the board has so far?
I do. Let me get to it. Number one, thank you for this book because it's been highly enlightening, very transparent, and very educational. So appreciate all the work you and your team have put into putting this together. I'm in section 2. It says highlights and changes in the general fund budget. So like the third page. Down at the bottom it says athletic trainer coverage for both high schools discontinued per prior agreement with Spalding Regional. So does that 16 grand mean we're going to pick it up?
Yes, ma'am. What that means is, and Mr. Akins, and I've asked people to be, if he's in here, I don't know where he went, but if somebody, I can speak to it, but if he needs to. The administrative services budget, which Mr. Akins normally proposes, had a $16,000 figure as if we were doing on a contract basis with the hospital. Those two employees are paid through the payroll, which we recognized a few meetings ago, so there's no need to budget that. It's in the payroll, what we call above the line, and when we send these budgets out, they're budgeting on non-payroll items. So there was no need to keep budgeting that. We talked about that in that meeting, and we felt we could bring that back in and repurpose that money. So Anthony, do you know what we're talking about? You fully in agreement with what I just said?
Okay, so our student athletes will be taken care of. That's
Absolutely.
all I want to know.
Nothing changes. They're just on the payroll as an employee.
Gotcha.
Yes, ma'am.
Because I just feel like that's a very important position.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any other questions? Board members?
I'd like to save mine until we get through the presentation. I'm good
Okay.
for where we are right now.
Okay. So if you would bear with me, I don't want to bore you, but let me kind of go through these a little bit, and if I need to call on somebody, I will, to articulate. So I think I was talking to Mr. Doss earlier. It seems strange to me to list again, I'm calling these above the line items because we typically are talking to you all about step increases or salary increases, but we're not listing them for everybody in the world to see. But I feel like you need to see the investment in staff that this district is about to offer up to you to approve. So most of what you're seeing, $5 million or so, I haven't added the exact number up, is going to be in these items. So the governor proposed a certified salary increase, so we're putting that here, and the only math associated with this is 1,000 employees at a $2,000 increase, and then $800,000 for benefits for $2.8 million. That number is listed on here, but you see out to the right, we've not given you a determination on whether that's good, better, or best. That'll be the next meeting where we'll bring that back to you. If everything on here under consideration was requested, it would all be in the best. The best would have everything. So just want to remind you of that for last year. So the certified administrative salary increase, that's what that component is. On one of our prior slides, we talked about a step increase. This is presented to you as if that's what the number would be with no salary scale adaptation or anything. About $800,000 a year is what an annual salary step would cost the district. The third item is our compensation study. And if y'all don't mind, if you do have your book, let me refer to that just a second. So in tab 6, I want to just run through this. Important that you hear this from me. In tab 6, the very first page is a proposed 190-day salary schedule for teachers. The word proposed has never been in this book before like this, but I remind you the governor signed the budget Thursday. We wanted to give you something, so you got proposed. It's got a $2,000 markup, but we need to check all that, okay? The next 2 pages are a Microsoft Word version of administrative titles and their salary grade, and then a step scale for administrators. And it also has a $2,000 markup associated with that. Most of those individuals are certified. The next section has got some, I guess that's yellow at the top. For the next 2 pages, what I want you to really pay attention to, and I realize this is cut down small reading. We have always included this type of chart in the book, but this year Ms. Battle's office did a query and added some columns in the middle, and you can actually see per title on the left. If you go about middle to the page, you'll see the current hourly rate for employees in those positions. You'll see a proposed hourly rate, which is the salary study recommendation. You'll also see the difference in the hourly rate. You'll see a current total annual salary and a proposed annual salary. And over to the right, you'll see the impact of how many employees that is, and then some notes to that. And on the second page, if you go all the way to the bottom, you'll see the impact of that, which is somewhere in the $1.4 million. I've got 1.2 on this slide, but 1.4 maybe with benefits. That in your salary study executive summary, you heard that as option 2. So if you're familiar with that. So, and I'd like, I don't know, Ms. Battle, if you want to say any words about that, because you did a huge amount of work with this. This actually looked at the number of bodies. If we just looked at vacancies and everything, then that number would be higher. I acknowledge that. This is the number of people in there right now with a reasonable amount of filling of those vacancies. So if that makes sense, the number would have been higher in the executive summary than what we're showing right here. So I want to stop right here a minute because there may be some questions. Does that make sense, what I just said, everybody?
Yes, it does to me. And I appreciate you putting it in, taking the time to put it into those columns so we can see the difference and the increase.
I do too. This is, when I saw this initially, and now with just a couple of comments you've had, it makes more sense to me. So I thank our employees that, this has been a long time coming, and we recognize that, and Dr. Simmons recognized that. For us to retain and recruit, we don't have any choice, because the compensation study clearly showed that. And this is really awesome, and thank you, Ms. Battle, for you and your team putting this together. So an employee can go in, because we all relate to a $2,000 or $3,000 increase in our pay. So when I could go in here and see the $2,000, the $2,500, the $3,000, I think our employees will be a little. I think they're going to jump up and down a little bit, because this is pretty good. And I know when I was still working full time, that was what I looked at. I'm sure all of us in the room have done that too. So I appreciate this information very much.
Let me say one thing. This item and the next 2, I might need to get Judy to help me with this. But Ms. Battle, if you don't mind, can you say a few words about those folks that are classified that might be maxed out? We're going to talk about certified that might be maxed out, but can you say something about what the study did for classified employees? Maybe they've been at 20 years for 5 years. Can you talk about that a second?
Yes. our current salary schedules top out, it's just the range, they top out at 20 years. And if you look at that salary study, we worked in longevity steps for our classified employees to extend the step increase up to year 25 and beyond. And what we actually recognize, we have some employees that have been in the district that long, and they have topped out at salary step 20. So we've taken into consideration longevity steps that would actually reflect a more robust incentive for employees to stay with the district a little bit longer. So you'll see that when we finalize our salary schedules that we have added at least 4 additional steps to the classified salary schedules.
And will that be in the recommendation too, or the?
That's a part of option 2.
Part of option 2.
When they actually proposed it, they've got it built in, so that's
Okay.
been in consider. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Ms. Battle. I'm going to keep going unless y'all have a question, because all these next 3 are kind of employee related. The next one, Judy, help me with this. We had talked about earlier, last meeting as well, a longevity step for certified educators that maybe was on the 23 years. So as a reminder, this district does more than most districts in terms of paying a local supplement on more years than 21. So our salary scale for certified goes to 23. But we do have some educators that have been stuck at the 23 salary grade for years. So this proposes, and the number says 300,000. I think we were trying to ballpark a number. Can you speak to what that means and the literalness of that? And we've been out to some campuses and we've heard people ask us, and we've engaged them about that.
So for the certified employees, there's a different salary schedule. The state salary schedule tops out at 21. As a local district, we go all the way to 23. But what we're proposing will extend that salary schedule to 25. So our certified and our classified people will have a salary schedule that goes to 25 years. How this will benefit additionally with our certified people, when we extend those, when we add the longevity steps, any pay increase will ultimately reflect in terms of teachers' retirement, as we know all so well, but additionally it will help with their base pay as well as their local teaching supplement. Our teaching supplement is a percentage of the base pay. So by adding these 2 additional steps, it really is going to be beneficial for our employees who have longevity with the district. Hopefully it will encourage additional 2 more years. You know, teachers' retirement looks at the top 2 years of salary, and that will help people as they plan to retire in their later years with our district. So this is really good work. And I think once you look at it more closely, you'll recognize that it is truly a benefit for all of our employees.
So is it fair to say then that this could also be used as a recruitment tool for teachers that may already be at a year 21 in a particular district and decide that they would like to come join Griffin Spalding because they can go to 25 years?
Yes.
Okay. The next one, Ms. Battle, come on one more time. So this is one we've not spent as much time talking about, and not sure if it'll make the final cut. It might, but we need to talk to the superintendent a little bit more about our desire to recognize non-certified public school retirement employees, people not eligible to be in TRS, in this way. We all know that you can hold on to sick leave, apply it to retirement, et cetera. People go out with 28 years, 2 years of credit, they're drawing 60% on 30. Am I explaining that right?
You are.
Can you? So I put 175,000 in here, although we know that would be, if we do what you said, everybody at one time. Right. Can you explain a little bit on that? Our desire to recognize them as well.
Yeah. And so our public school employees, retirees, those are typically our custodians, our school nutrition workers, bus drivers. Sick leave is not applied towards their retirement. In TRS, any sick leave we have banked, we can apply it towards service credit. Public school doesn't operate in that fashion. And in doing research, we have some of our public school employees with over 200 sick days, which is equivalent to a full year of service. So we conducted research just to see if we could offer some kind of incentive, a way to pay back for those sick days at retirement. And we ran a couple of scenarios where we would offer a stipend, a payout when they were able to retire. The scenarios that I presented to Mr. Jones and our superintendent were with the idea that all of them would leave at the same time. And that figure reflects everyone retiring in the same year in the same month. But that cost that's reflected there will of course be staggered. But it's just a way to let people know we appreciate them. Sometimes people with the knowledge that if you don't use it, you lose it, are more inclined to use days as opposed to finishing out the year or completing the full year. It's just a way to give back and let them know how much we appreciate their dedication, and we want to recognize it. They have a lot of sick days built up that are essentially going unused and unclaimed.
So the key word there is attendance. That incentivizes attendance for a back-end incentive, or whatever you want to call it. So, I mean, that's a good thing. We're in the infancy of that one, but I wanted to put it on here anyway for you to consider.
I appreciate that, Mr. Jones. How does this relate to other districts nearby? Just curious.
I haven't been a part of that. I think Ms. Battle has experience with that.
Had a query to our HR group, and it's just a hodgepodge. Some districts offer it, some do not. I think this would really set us apart.
I think it would be incentive to stay also. You know, if I know I'm going to get a pretty healthy check on the other end, that's pretty cool. I really like that idea a lot.
Could I just ask, with you compiling your requested numbers, what margin or area percentage are you using?
So on the 175,000, that's what I was saying. That is if everybody came out today. So that number's high.
I'm basically talking about when you're formulating a budget, you have a margin or area. Some people use, for example, 3% from actual.
Yeah, I think that's accurate. One of the things I was going to tell you, I'm not sure if you were here when I said this, but with the governor, this is for all of the salary items. With him just signing that Thursday, we haven't had a chance to take that valid data, load it into our accounting system, look at actual salaries, and see if we're bumping folks up 2,000. Are they on that where they don't get an actual step? There's a couple of certified throughout the years. It's a lateral step. So there's going to be a margin of that. I think it won't be any higher than what I'm putting down here, I guess, if I can answer it that way. And another thing, I may have said this in the public hearing, these items are presented to you as if the general fund was paying for all of them. But we do have nutrition, which will be out of the nutrition fund. Federal programs will be paying for some of those. So I just give it to you without any, last year I put CARES over to the right on some of them. We hadn't got to that point yet to see how much of the impact of general would be. So I tell you that in up front. Okay, a couple of these other items. The superintendent talked to us months back about his desire for us to look at a centralized purchasing and procurement position. I'm not sure the exact name, but we're calling it a specialist position to look at bids and posting things online and helping us have an independent source regardless of what the bid or RFP item is in the district. So this is being proposed. These items for salaries are high. That doesn't necessarily mean that's with benefits, and it wouldn't probably even be anywhere near that, but I've got to have a number to put in here. We're still looking at similar districts to see what they have. Another thing we may look at that is create that as a budget/procurement position. So again, we got to get a little bit more data on that, but that's the reason that's listed here. Compensation specialist. This one we actually already have, but for transparency, we're giving it to you because it's something that we implemented that you all approved a couple of months ago. We have an existing employee in HR and finance that has moved into that role, and that's for helping us ensure accuracy on salaries annually. We're also going to implement, I covered this in the retreat, I don't know if you remember, but even you all that receive some type of compensation for work, we're going to ask you to sign off on that you understand what you're supposed to be receiving annually. This is all in addition to you signing your contract. This is another layer on top of that. So we wanted to bring that to your attention as well. We are proposing an executive secretary for human resources. I believe Ms. Battle may be the only office, maybe one other, that doesn't have that in the district. You all approved one for myself last year. I'm a good example. Well, we waited 10 months. We only just filled that position in April. So we actually have a 10-month budget savings in this year. So we're always looking for those. We were not ready for that. You all know I was out too and the audit going on. So we wasn't ready to fill that position. But this is from Ms. Battle's office. And again, we're getting ready to move across the street hopefully this summer. And that will serve her well. We'll be on different floors, so there's going to be a need for that.
We did see your very competent intern you had, though. She did great.
That's true. That's true. I appreciate that, too. That means a lot. The next one, I may have to ask Dr. Simmons to elaborate on this one because I don't know the actual duties of this position. I think it's a combination of an elimination of an existing position and an improvement of duties for another one, but it's a director of evaluation and accountability.
So really quickly, board members, this is really, we retitled and we coupled some different work. You're familiar with accountability. We're just going to add evaluation to that. This is not really a new cost to the budget. We actually have this position. When you consider Mr. Josh Griffiths, that work, that office, one and the same, a little bit different nuance. But
Okay. The next item, we annually look at our allotments for special education. We have a figure on here of $240,000. That number's fluid. It may go up and down, but we've talked to Mr. Kelly and Dr. Sauce about needs and placement in the district of children with special needs. So we're just, for transparency, putting this in here to you just like we did for teaching allotments. Dr. Simmons, again, you may have to mention something on this, and we have a couple of schools in our district that have entertained an initiative called A Leader in Me. I'm going to let him, if he doesn't mind, Dr. Simmons, say a few words about that.
so succinctly, board